Story 1. There was a game called Get Down, Mr. President, where everyone in an area would put their fingers to their ears like the Secret Service, and the last person to do it would be tackled. It could start at any moment and would end up in a dog pile in the hall. Story 2. Gel pens. When I was in primary school, there was this weird trend where all the girls would suck on the ends of gel pens so their tongues turned into different colors. They would trade pens with each other in the school bathrooms and sneak away from the teachers and go to hidden parts of the schoolyard so they didn't get caught. It was the closest I can think of compared to a drug ring, but imagine it with 7-year-old girls. One of my friends was really popular because she was the girl who slurped on the most pens and would get caught in literally every class on a different gel pen. And the teachers would always have to walk her out to the nurse, as she'd make herself sick and throw up. They eventually banned them. I tried it once and spat it out immediately because it was so nasty and tasted like ink. Duh. I didn't get it then, and I still don't get it now. Story 3. I'm a teacher. A few years ago, we had to ban applause. The kids would randomly start a round of applause and just keep going. It was unnerving. It was disrupting lessons, assemblies. Sometimes they would applaud in the dining hall or corridors. Still don't know how this trend started or why. The other thing we had to ban was pilgrimage. They apparently learned the word in religious studies lessons. After that, they would, in large groups, walk from one end of the school to the other chanting pilgrimage, and basically knock over anything or any person that stood in their way. Story 4. In elementary school, my class was divided into two groups, penguins and rats. We would always go to our group for team assignments, for games, for anything really. Somehow, an actual rivalry started to sprout until the whole school was divided in these two groups, with first and second years getting into actual fights. Pretty soon, the principal canceled recess for the day and went to each classroom to tell us the penguin team and the rat team were banned. Others did create some smaller animal-named groups after that, but they all dissolved pretty quickly. Story 5. I was in middle school from 2009 to 2011. Bloons Tower Defense was huge. Everyone played it in any room that had a computer. The school even had to install special blockers, but people kept getting around them, so they straight up banned Adobe Flash. Someone at my high school managed to install Quake 3 Arena onto the central server, so it was able to be accessed by any computer connected to the network. There were kids in my web development class playing against other kids having their study hall in the library on the other side of the school. Not sure if the administration ever found out, but the year after I graduated, they changed out all the Windows computers with iMacs. Story 6. When I was younger, we played this game where you draw a circle on your hand, and other people would try to draw a line inside of it. If someone was able to draw a line in your circle, then you were out. The objective of the game was to be the last one standing. It was small at first, but eventually almost everyone in my grade became involved, and it spiraled out of control. Chaos. Pure chaos. Kids were tackling each other, running away from other students, disrupting lessons, etc. Teachers eventually began to talk to us about how far our game had gone and started banning it altogether. It was fun while it lasted, boys. Story 7. Rulers. Year 10 in high school. For whatever reason, someone decided to smack a guy across the head with a ruler. Then everyone went out and bought a ruler. Suddenly, everyone was a knight with a sword. Staff kept confiscating them, but rulers are cheap, so kids just went out and bought them by the handful. They ended up banning rulers. At a school, the kids who were taking geometry that year and needed them had to be assigned rulers at the beginning of class and then turn them back in. Story 8. Rubber bands. Kids weren't even using them to shoot at other kids or otherwise misbehave with them. Kids would buy packs of rubber bands, tie the rubber bands together, and make like a big rubber band chain. It became a contest to see who could get a chain of rubber bands to stretch the furthest. You could not find a pack of rubber bands at a store for probably 20 miles. This was when I lived in a small town, so there wasn't a ton of stores in that 20 miles. No Amazon either. Public internet access didn't exist yet. One kid got so many rubber bands they could stretch it the length of the school building. While stupid, I didn't think it was a bad hobby, as kids weren't shooting them or shooting stuff with them. It was all about how big of a chain they could make. School rewarded our pointless creativity with a ban on rubber bands at the school. All rubber band chains were confiscated on site. Story 9. The kid that started a tuck shop out of his locker. Went to a wholesaler, bought some stuff, sold it, used the profits to buy more, repeat and repeat, until he's now staffing a child guard to stop shoplifting, and renting other people's lockers for stock overflow. Our classroom just became kids queuing to buy sweets and energy drinks. Sometimes a line so long that in 15 minutes, he couldn't get everyone waiting served. Then, bam, banned. No selling anything on school property. Pretty much just aimed at this kid. Dude ended up stabbing someone, got expelled. No idea where he is now, but I think his shop getting banned and being replaced with an overpriced, healthy, staff-run tuck shop squashed his entrepreneurial spirit. Story 10. Me and my buddies had a game where we'd draw a circle on the back of our hand. One person in the beginning of the day would have a marker and be infected, while trying to get a mark on another friend's circle, rendering them infected as well. This would go on until there were no more survivors that day, or until the infected lost. Well, it eventually spread to everyone in our school in a matter of 2 days somehow. When I mean everyone, I literally mean everyone. I remember an announcement at lunchtime saying that if you had a circle on your hand, you had to go wash it off in the bathroom or get detention. Yep, all 300 kids in that lunchroom went to the restroom and washed it off. Crap was whack. Story 11. Rock, paper, scissors. People at my middle school kept playing a game called Oreo, where you play rock, paper, scissors, and the loser has to do a dare. According to the teachers, it got out of hand. It really didn't. None of the dares were that bad. So they decided to ban rock, paper, scissors. Hearing that on the announcements in the morning instantaneously killed half of my brain cells. If you were caught playing rock, paper, scissors, you would immediately get detention. Dumbest thing I have ever heard. Story 12. Depending on what phone you had, you could download an app that makes your phone a universal remote. You could control a lot of things, including projectors. All you had to do was select the brand of the projector, and it would work 9 times out of 10. Anyways, me and some friends kept turning off the projector during class or freezing the screen, and they were absolutely clueless. Multiple other teachers came in and tried to fix the projector, but eventually they caught on and banned cell phones in the classroom. Story 13. Junk food. They used to have amazing food at the canteen, but then the Australian government implemented laws that schools could only sell healthy stuff like carrot sticks. Prior to that, they had chips with collectible toys and stuff and sweets. But because of unhealthy kids whose parents cannot make them a packed lunch, they killed the whole thing. They even tried to make it exciting at my school to compensate for the lack of money spent at the canteen. I will say at 22 what I first said at 11. You cannot make a carrot, pear, or any other fruit more interesting by simply shoving it on a stick. Story 14. Does anybody remember silly bands? Back when I was in grade school, you were only cool if you had hundreds on each of your wrists. Soon, however, we learned how to put the rubber band on the tip of our fingers, pull it around our thumbs, and hold it with our pinkies. When you release your pinky, you would have effectively shot someone. It was basically finger guns that evolved. After fights over silly bands and rubber shootouts that usually ended in injured eyes, a school-wide ban was placed on our beloved fun-shaped elastic. Tragic times for the schoolyard it was. Story 15. Touch the pole of the basketball net. I'm Austrian, so I'll stick to age instead of what grade or school I was in, for minimum confusion. We were 9. And for some reason, you were one of the coolest people around if you and your friends got to hang out around the basketball net pole. For some even weirder reason, only one of the pools in our school's courtyard was cool. My entire year literally fought to be first at the pole, and whoever touched it first at break time got to claim it. It got so intense that the teachers introduced the rule that whoever touched the pole had to write the word pole 1,000 times. This introduced a new game, which was, who dares to touch the pole when the teachers look away? I had a friend who even pre-wrote the word pole 1,000 times when she was bored, for backup, in case they caught her. Story 16. Pretty sure these were called click-clacks. I don't think they ever actually got banned, although you can't even get them now because not safe. It was 2 solid, heavy balls connected by a string. You held the string in the middle and moved your hand up and down, making the balls hit each other above your head and below your hand repeatedly for as long as you could until you missed. It took a lot of skill to do this, and was really fun. The problem was, when you missed, the balls would slam into the inside of your forearms and leave major bruises. They tried to make a comeback some years ago, but the new, safe version used straight sticks of plastic, so the balls always connected. It was basically just a noisemaker. No skill involved at all. What's the fun in that? Story 17. I was in the 4th grade when my parents took me into Sam's Club. It's basically the Walmart brand of Costco. I noticed that I could buy a 100-pack of blow pops, just a sucker on a stick with gum in the middle, for $10. I crunched some numbers, bought the candy, and sold them for 50 cents apiece. I sold out in about a day and a half, went back and bought 3 boxes, sold out in 2 days. I was making good money for a 10-year-old. By about my 9th box, I got blackballed. They told me I was committing tax fraud, which scared the crap out of me. I was certain that the FBI would kick in my door and I'd be sent to juvie. My parents were proud of my entrepreneurial spirit, but agreed that I should stop if the school saw fit. I never ate a single sucker, and I felt like a wealthy man with like $300. Story 18. In my elementary school, it was literally anything becoming popular. Yu-Gi-Oh cards? Banned. Pokemon cards? Banned. Beyblades? Hella banned. Worst part was that some of the teachers would confiscate the stuff and give it to their own kid rather than returning it to the student or the student's parents at the end of the day. I lost several holographic Pokemon cards like that when I was 7, and I have never forgotten, nor have I forgiven that teacher. It literally happened after school, outside the classroom while I was waiting in the pickup zone for my parents. A friend of mine pulled the cards out of my backpack to look at them, and this cow of a teacher swooped in and grabbed them. Story 19. 2 different colored eyes. In my middle school, several kids had to wear glasses or contacts. It was around this time that colored contacts became cheap enough that people used them regularly, and a few of the kids in my class had them. One day, a kid lost or dropped his regular contact, so he had to use one that was colored. A few of the other kids thought it looked cool, so they did it too. Then, a few kids who did not need eye correction went out and got colored non-prescription contacts and started joining in on the fun. Within 2 weeks, the principal banned all contacts. Since that did not fly with the parents, some kids only had contacts, I guess. The rule changed to just cover 2 different colored eyes. So, yeah. Story 20. My district worked a deal with Apple so that our district would get iPads to replace books and paper, and Apple would get a huge tax break for donating to a public school. My class was the test class, mainly to make sure their school apps worked. They didn't. And to test what they would need to disable, because they were giving every kid in the school tech to mess around with. First, they took off music and iTunes. Next, AirDrop, adult pics. Next, they banned games and wiped our data, which totally didn't mess up our work. Then they took iMessage and the App Store away. How they expected us to download the apps we needed for school without the App Store? I don't know. They gave us technology, then banned everything but Canvas and iMovie. Story 21. In 8th grade, a black market candy business came into play. Small taffy-like things called Fruities were in high demand. One teacher started to hand them out as a treat, and kids were hooked. They were cheap as dirt. You could get around $300 to $500 for $2 or $3. Kids would put 10 in a small plastic bag and sell them for $1. It quickly grew into a competitive market. People started charging only 50 cents for a bag. Others would put 20 Fruities in a bag to sell. A hierarchy quickly developed. One kid became the major supplier. He sold the large bags to kids in return for 20% of their profits. He made around $200. Low-level dealers made easily around $90. People filling their backpacks with Fruities. They would carry all of their books and just have the bags filled with products. Some people even started bringing athletic bags filled with pre-made baggies. Eventually, the school banned the candy and tried to ban the plastic snack bags. They busted one of the head suppliers and confiscated all the candy in his locker and all the money he had made that week, which was somewhere around $40. 8th grade was crazy. Story 22. You can't have a pager because you must be a drug dealer if you own one. Later on, kids started getting cell phones, and those weren't banned. Basically, if your parents were rich, you had a cell phone. Otherwise, you had a pager or nothing. Pagers were still banned. Kids started hiding them in their underwear, which led to strip searches and pat-downs for pagers. But cell phones were totally allowed. Also, tank tops were banned, but tube tops were allowed. So people would wear tank tops with the straps down and tucked in, and have to hold them up all day or they slipped down. This resulted in a lot of people accidentally flashing. Also, you couldn't have visible bra straps, so most girls ended up just going without. Boys could wear tank tops or go shirtless, though. Some of the boys tested the rules and just wore bras and nothing else. They did not get in trouble. Story 23. It was 98 to 99 in middle school. Coke introduced this card you can redeem points with when you purchase Coke products to later redeem something worth $2 after buying $50 worth of soda. Ugh, Coke products. You can go up to any retailer and grab one, except in the city where we lived in, because 1. Most stores didn't know or care what the cards did, so they never offered it to their customers. And 2. Unless you lived in the rich part of town, you can never redeem the points. The card, rather than what it was intended to be used for, became a status symbol. If you had one, you were cool. You also kept the card in its special envelope for extra protection, so your card wouldn't get damaged. It was the equivalent of having a condom in your wallet. You showed it off, and people thought you were getting some, even though you wouldn't know it works. Couple of kids would have extra cards and give them to their friends, or sell them for $5 in the cafeteria. Then, kids started beating up other kids for their cards. Some teachers would take them away from kids. Some would destroy them. It annoyed every adult in the building. The school never banned them because they figured it was a fad. And it sure was. Story 24. Wi-Fi was banned at my school in 2012. I went to a really small private school. 150 kids, kindergarten to grade 12. So our school always had Wi-Fi. Suddenly, some new insane parents all got together and started lobbying against Wi-Fi, saying the waves were bad for the kids' brains and would cause cancer. Just some dumb crap. So the school got rid of Wi-Fi the next year, and just set up Ethernet cable hubs around the school. But only a few of them, and they didn't have enough cords for the amount of people that wanted to use them. They weren't accessible in class either, which for our school was weird. In high school, we were allowed to research stuff and Google things on our laptops in class. It was a laptop-reliant school. Thankfully, all that garbage happened the year after I graduated. I still can't believe the idiocy. And I think they still don't have Wi-Fi now, but I'd have to double check. Story 25. The words indeed and indubitably in middle school. A group of us used those words excessively, and most of us worked them into every single paper we wrote. It became such a big joke that people would start laughing in class whenever anybody worked one of the words into their answer to a question. So the teachers had a fairly good reason to ban it. They were generally pretty chill. Then, there was a night when a number of us were presenting year-long research projects, so everybody's parents were invited to see them. Of course, some of the teachers who had banned the words were there, so a number of our parents started using indeed and indubitably when they were talking to them. One of the teachers turned bright red and looked like he was about to implode when he had to pretend that those words weren't driving him crazy. Story 26. Makeup. It was a selective all-girls school, and apparently the orange faces were a bad representation of the school. People still wore it, obviously. I still vividly remember being handed a makeup wipe by my art teacher literally every time I had a lesson with her. Eventually, I got sent home for it, which is when my mother lost it and screamed down the phone that me wearing mascara was not a reason to prevent me from my education. And she was not the only one. The ban still stands as far as I know, but from what I've heard, they're far more lenient now. Story 1. Tights and stockings at my all-girl prep school. They were a required part of our uniform until the faculty found out about a nifty study habit that was getting pretty popular: writing crib notes on your thigh under the nylons. Then, during tests, you just had to cross your legs, maybe pull up the waistband, and the stocking would stretch just enough so you could see your notes. Story 2. When I was in high school, we got permanent markers banned. Someone organized a game of assassins where everyone is given a target to kill, and if you're successful, you inherit their target. It was $1 to enter, and the winner got the jackpot. We had around 150 students out of the 600 in the school participating. The objective was to mark your target with the Sharpie on their skin, and they were then declared dead. This could only be done in the hallway or the cafeteria, not in class or off campus. Well, our vice principal decided she wanted to participate, saying that if she won the money, she'd use it to buy something for the school. Fair enough, we thought, so we let her in. Well, one of my friends ended up with her as a target, so in between classes one day, He sneaks up behind her and does his best Sam Fisher assassination attempt, grabbing her mouth and slashing her throat with a Sharpie. Well, that was just too much emotional stress for our poor VP. She took his Sharpie, had him serve in-school suspension, and forced us to discontinue the game. No more Sharpies could be used by the students or staff. And no one knows whatever became of the prize money either. We kept it in a jar in our principal's office so no one could take it. So we all hated our VP even more than we did before. Story 3. Drug dogs. They started bringing in drug dogs in my sophomore year. They would smell the lockers and cars, and if one hit on your locker or car, you had to go open them up and let the school search it. By my junior year, a group of stoners had enough of it. They took bong water and put it in a bunch of spray bottles and sprayed it all over the lockers and as many cars as they could. My school had about 1,400 kids in it. It took one time of having 300 plus kids pulled out of class to have the locker searched to make them rethink the policy. What really got the parents to force the school to stop, though, was the cars. When drug dogs hit on a spot, they kind of go nuts. Imagine 25 plus cars getting a hit and having dogs scratch the hell out of the paint for a search that found nothing. There were a lot of parents that didn't push too hard, but some were demanding that the school pay for the damage. So, no more drug dogs. Story 4. The word buckle. I kid you not. Back in grade 7, a few kids in one class had it as a word on a spelling test and thought it would be funny to just shout it out randomly. The teachers, believing it to be a code word for something more sinister, decided to outright ban the word across the school. Needless to say, the faculty became the brunt of many jokes both from students and their parents. Story 5. Two-way hallways. Sounds crazy, right? The principal and his staff thought it would be a smart idea to have one-way hallways in order to cut down student traffic. If your locker was right around the corner and you had to go against the traffic in order to get there, you had to walk all the way around. If you passed your class on the way to your locker, you had to make 2 circles around the building. This significantly increased tardiness and write-ups. Terrible idea. Story 6. It doesn't translate well into English, but gay piles. Basically, if someone was on the ground because they fell or were wrestling with someone or whatever, this was middle school, someone would yell gay pile and everyone nearby would throw themselves in a pile on top of them. It wasn't a problem until some 20 plus kids decided to throw themselves on top of some poor guy. Story 7. Google. Our high school had some kind of contract with this really crappy school-appropriate search engine called NetTrekker. They banned using Google in school because it wasn't scholarly. Only NetTrekker was allowed. They tried extending this to beyond the school. They wanted us to use only NetTrekker for internet searches outside of school and sent home a pamphlet about internet rules outside the classroom. They said that students should not have Android phones. I got a referral for having a Moto X smartphone. This was in 2015. Story 8. Blankets. It was in the South, and they keep the AC on too high because it's so freaking hot outside. Girls would wear shorts to be cool when outside, but they'd get too cold inside. Thus, the blankets to keep their legs warm in class. Of course, blankets are opaque, and they were already being used to cover up legs. Well, if a girl started sharing a blanket with a guy, yeah, things could get a little handsy. Story 9. Candy necklaces at my middle school. One day, a couple of my friends came into the playground before school started with a candy necklace each, which immediately got everyone's attention. After we all demanded to know where they got them and how much they cost, from the corner shop down the street and 10 cents as I recall, one or two others said they might go and get one for themselves before school started. That might go turned into them sprinting to the shop once one kid figured out how to weaponize them. Holding one piece of candy between their teeth, stretching forward the elastic and biting down, it would catapult pieces of candy at whatever it was aimed at. That morning, a few kids bought a candy necklace each and played a game of firing bits at each other. The next morning, all 400 kids that attended that school were engaged in an all-out necklace war. Every single one of us must have had at least one, and our own technique for maximizing the firing rate. After doing our best recreation of trench warfare all morning, and having the kind of fun that only comes with an entire playground full of kids all playing the same game, we were all ushered into the assembly hall to be told that candy necklaces were now banned. Nobody lost an eye, just in case you were wondering. Story 10. Pogs and Pokemon cards in elementary school. Pogs because of those metal slammers they were afraid would be used as weapons. Pokemon cards because kids like to show off their first edition Charizards, and thefts and buyer's remorse trades happened often. A lot of people have pointed out that Pogs and Pokemon cards weren't a thing at the same time. That's mostly true, but elementary school for me was K through 6. Pokemon cards came out in January of 1999, which puts me in 6th grade. McDonald's did a big promotion for Power Rangers/VR Troopers that involved Pogs. I remember being psyched about these things, and so were all of my friends. VR Troopers did not come out until 1994, which puts me in 1st grade at the very least. Story 11. Twisters. A weird dude in my class got a lot of laughs by letting people give him titty twisters. Apparently, after repeated and increasingly hard titty twisters, the connective tissue behind his nipple broke, so this guy could literally stretch his nipple 5 to 6 inches off of his chest. Obviously, being a teenager and a weird one at that, he went around showing everyone and their mother his new ability. He got warned about it several times, and the final straw was when he was seen by the administration with an equally weird girl his nipple 5 to 6 inches off his chest. They immediately banned titty twisters. But there was really no need, because we were all pretty scarred by what we had seen from this kid. I cannot believe I'm about to do this, but for those of you asking what this looked like, the best I can describe it would be an upside-down funnel. When he would pull on the nipple, all the loose skin surrounding it would come off of his chest, and a sort of cone-shaped base would comprise the first 3 inches. And the rest did pretty much look like D-nipples. It was probably a decent 3 to 4 inch diameter circle around his nipple of broken connective tissue, so I promise you, it came off his chest a solid 5 to 6 inches. Over 3 sports seasons during 3 years of high school, I can also tell you that it got to that point progressively. He was literally tugging on that nip in the locker room every single day, stretching it out. But hey, who am I to judge? I guess. You could only kind of tell that it was messed up before he would pull on it. So I'm not sure if that would eventually repair itself or just start to sag in the grossest way possible as he gets older. Well, I hope you're happy now, Reddit. I'm going to have PTSD nightmares tonight. Story 12. Any liquid not in a clear plastic bottle. And then the only liquid we could have was water. The ban was because a girl in my grade got caught with vodka in a clear plastic bottle. Everyone in my school never understood the ban because vodka is clear like water, and the only reason the teacher even caught on to her was because another kid was joking around about alcohol, and the with the vodka threw the bottle away in the garbage next to the teacher's desk. We weren't allowed to have water bottles at all. Same reasoning. A teacher took mine once when he saw me filling it at the fountain, saying, "For all I know, you could have vodka in that." As I was filling it, at the water fountain. Time-traveling me would go back and say, "Oh, I didn't realize vodka came out of this fountain." But at the time, I was just too dumbfounded to be that clever. Story 13. Toasters. We got in trouble for making toast in a math class because our teacher was notoriously oblivious. Like, we full-on snuck a toaster into the classroom and made toast with jelly and distributed it under the desks 2 class periods in a row. After getting chewed out for being disrespectful, we then designed our class shirts with the "Come and Take It" flag with a toaster in the middle. The head of the school somehow didn't find out about the shirt design until we had them and wore them to school, despite the fact that he was a class sponsor. That is awesome. All the other common areas were taken, so my friend group would hang out at the front of the school. The VP told us we could no longer congregate there as we were a fire hazard. He threatened to write us up if we didn't disperse, even after we told him that in the event of a fire, we would be the first out of the door. This went on for a week, until we got black t-shirts and printed fire hazard on them. We wore them a lot. He banned shirts that said fire hazard on them. So we printed shirts that said "Still Not on Fire." He banned amateur printed shirts, so we had them professionally printed by an internet company and kept the receipts with us. Eventually, the ringleaders got called into a meeting where the superintendent told him to stop harassing us. Didn't stop us from harassing him, however. Then came the shirts that said, "Do work, Dennis." I do realize that we were a bunch of inflammatory little a-holes. Maybe that's why he was concerned. Actually, my best friend was a pretty decent graphic designer for a 17-year-old. Story 14. Cooking class. Superintendent decided that, I quote verbatim, "Cooking is an impractical art. Today, everyone can just buy pre-made meals and no one has time to cook, or they could be smart and hire a personal chef." This person makes over $150,000 a year after taxes and is in charge of 3 schools in the district, totaling 3,000 students. Story 15. Wearing a white t-shirt in middle school. Lived in an area where there was suburban, rural, and a sprinkle of urban within a 15-mile radius, so everyone got mixed together. Well, a small handful of the rural kids decided White Wednesday was gonna be a thing. You wear a white t-shirt to represent... At first, it was a small handful. Then the suburban kids saw a lot of people wearing white, so they did it too, most not knowing why. Before you know it, things got bad quick, so the school said no white t-shirts. I'm completely okay with being proud of your race, heritage, etc. I'm Jamaican, and I rep the culture every chance I get. But being one of the few black kids in the whole school, it got intimidating. Especially kids yelling, "I'ma paint this bus blue and spray the N-word on the side." When you're the only black kid on the bus, it's clear who they're forming against. Story 16. Sack whacking. Guys would hit each other in the balls as a prank, or whatever. Apparently, it was causing a big enough problem that the entire school had to attend an assembly where the deputy principal informed everyone. There has been a large outbreak of sack whacking. Entire school was laughing so hard, even the deputy, who was a really strict and uptight guy, started laughing his butt off. We were also banned from playing with large balls, basketballs, soccer balls, etc., at the same assembly. That was also received very well. Story 17. Shag bands. These plastic rubber bracelet things. Basically, if someone broke your shag band, you supposedly had to have sex with them. A natural law according to some, but never to my knowledge ever enforced. The school got wind of it and became horrified that a bunch of 13-year-olds would ever think something like this was reasonable, and came down on us with an iron fist. I vividly remember one teacher scornfully saying, "So-called shag bands," and then spit in disgust. It was hilarious. Story 18. Any type of coin. Seriously. High school, about 7 or 8 years ago, I was a freshman eating lunch, and then heard some screaming and some kid being rushed out of the cafeteria. Turns out, some kid whipped a quarter across the cafeteria, and it flew kind of like a frisbee right into this kid's eye and sliced it, which completely tore it open. The principal talked to us all about it in the auditorium. He had to have surgery, obviously, and I think the victim's family sued the aggressor's family. I still remember I was eating curly fries and a slice of pizza that day. Wrecked. Story 19. Short selling stocks. Our class was the first to go through new mandatory financial literacy classes, and part of it was a stock market simulation. We began betting against the market when we set it up to crash specific stocks, and each time, our money rose exponentially. We had to fill out paperwork for each trade, which ended up amounting to around 30 pages of trades. At this point, we had trillions. Our teacher was also very condescending about how great she was at the market, so we then bought huge percentages of her stocks and sold them pennies on the dollar to crash her stocks as well. After a while, she checked everyone's progress and found we were trillionaires and went into a rage, even calling the company to see how we had cheated. They said we had short sold, which technically isn't cheating, but she still disqualified us from winning the class game and gave us all Bs. Now, there's a disclaimer before every class that says you'll automatically fail if you short sell. Story 20. Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic, and Pokemon cards. Some of the kids at school started trading and selling them during lunchtime. But it got so bad, as the kids were actually selling stolen cards they got from other students. My friend was swirlied one morning for his deck, and later that day he saw a kid with his Dark Magician card. He knew it was his because he had a tendency to chew the ends of his cards. The teachers put a stop to all of it, including playing the card games and bringing them on school grounds. Story 21. Had this little Bible study group that would meet during lunch, once a week. It grew in size really fast, so some of the parents of the kids started bringing homemade lunches to give to the kids that attended. Anyone was accepted to join. They never ran out of food, and it was free, so kids that didn't have money or weren't on the food plan could eat something other than straight junk food. It was stuff like sandwiches and chips, but still better than the crappy cafeteria food. After a while, though, the group grew a little too big, to the point where the school board found out about it and shut down the parents bringing lunches for the attendants because it was lowering the amounts of kids buying from the cafeteria. Ridiculous. After that, they instituted a rule that parents couldn't bring lunches to kids anymore. The overall reasoning was it lowered the cafeteria profits. So if you didn't have money or lunch, you were out of luck. If this was a public school, then that excuse they gave you was just pure BS. I'm on a school board, and at least for my school, the cafeteria doesn't have any profits. Any funds they collect for students who could afford to purchase lunches went right back into the food fund and was returned to ODE, Ohio Department of Education, at regular intervals. More likely than not, they were told that there could be some risk to having a Bible study group on school grounds, and they decided to clamp down on it before they got in trouble. Remember, many school boards are strictly volunteers who may or may not have any legal experience. They'd rather not get sued by a wayward, upset parent when all the board is doing is volunteering their time. Story 22. Pens. I'm not joking. Kids would buy somewhat fancy pens, and then there would be a bunch of trading and commotion. Dude, let me snag that Uniball. I'll give you 2 Pilot G2s. I remember there was a kid that everyone envied because of his Mont Blanc pen. Pretty soon, the school just banned using any outside pens and issued 2 of those crappy Bic round sticks. We were crafty though, and started to replace the ink cartridges with those from our fancier pens. So yeah, it was basically Prohibition, pen edition. Story 23. My whole life has led up to this question, and no one will ever see it. When I was in 7th grade, my principal banned flip-flops. My principal also happened to be my dad. When he came over the loudspeaker to announce that we would be banned from wearing them, he proceeded with, "No thongs are to be worn around school because they are a tripping hazard." Apparently, thongs are what they called flip-flops in the 70s. I wanted to die. Story 24. Sweaters with zippers. A new progressive principal found a correlation between those dang hoodlums and zippered sweaters. Obviously, everyone thought she was insane, so we all put tape over our zippers. Took a week to get back to normal. Story 25. Candy canes. Apparently, they were a safety hazard because you could suck on them and sharpen them into a point, which could then theoretically be used to stab somebody. Most of our school suspected that it was simply a way of getting the Ugly Christmas Sweater Club, a group of guys who wore ugly sweaters to school and roamed the hallways handing out candy canes while playing Christmas music, in trouble. It was by far the dumbest thing to ever happen at my school. Story 26. Went to high school in UK, and everything branded wasn't allowed. No trainers, no branded hats, backpacks need to be plain black, only black dress shoes, only Year 11 students, 15 to 16, could wear plain black jumpers under blazers while the rest of us had gray jumpers. But eventually, when we got a new principal, and once they couldn't control people wearing what they wanted, they stopped caring. As to why, I don't really know the exact reason. Nobody told me. It may have to do with the fact that it was an all-boy Catholic school.